Now, a provocative new book says the United States foreign policy has been a dangerous failure for more than a decade. It says this country's desire for international dominance is a direct threat to the future of this nation and its democracy. The book is called The American Way of Strategy. The author is Michael Lind, and he joins me tonight. And thanks for being with us.
Good to be here.
It's a tough read, I have to say, because the way you tell it, we're doing it completely wrong. You know, one of the great themes of this show is the middle class, and one of the great premises of your book is that a lot of military spending is actually damaging to prosperity and the middle class. Let me quote from your book for a second. Americans, beginning with the 18th century founders, have believed that a democratic republic is most likely to flourish where the majority of the people belong to a prosperous middle class. How is our foreign policy damaging our middle class?
Well, Kitty, our goal in the two world wars and the Cold War was to create an international environment that was safe enough that we did not have to create a garrison state, a fortress America, in which the government for defense expenditures took up so much of the economy that it saps the resources available for a healthy civilian middle class.
Well, how do defense expenditures in World War II compare to defense expenditures now?
Well, the defense expenditures in World War II were half of GDP. Right now, since the Bush administration, we have raised our defense expenditures as a share of GDP to the average during the Cold War, apart from the spikes in the Korean War and the Vietnam War. This is a period when, despite the al-Qaeda threat and the jihadist threat, we face no imminent great power threats, and nevertheless we're spending money at Cold War levels largely for a conventional military that is irrelevant when it comes to fighting terrorism.
Mm-hmm. Your other premise is very interesting to this broadcast, and it's on illegal immigration, and let me read that. And it's about the disruptive elements in a state. An anarchic state cannot govern its own territory and exports chaos to other countries. American security costs would be high in a world disrupted by terrorism, crime, policy, piracy, uncontrolled immigration, cross-border epidemics, and pollution and other consequences of anarchy. Don't we all really have a lot of these conditions already?
Well, as I say in The American Way of Strategy, traditionally we face two kinds of dangers beyond our borders. One is empire, in the form of Imperial and Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. In the early 21st century, the major threat beyond our borders comes from anarchy, from failed states, from uncontrolled transnational flows, whether of criminals or of terrorists, or of economic immigrants. Unfortunately, it's impossible to create a force field that will keep out jihadists and criminals and admit economic migrants. The first and most fundamental duty of the U.S. government is to protect its territory. And we did that in the Cold War by protecting us from invasion and from assault by missiles. Today, we have to protect it from infiltration of individuals, and that's a very challenging task, as you've documented on this program.
Let me just, we have just a minute left, but I wanted to bring this out because it's very key. It's about President Bush's 2005 inaugural address, and it says, "The declaration of a global crusade for democracy on behalf of the United States, rhetorical or serious, represents a radical and unwise departure from the historic American way of strategy." So you're basically saying that 2005 inaugural address just took a turn for the worse. Why do you believe that?
Woodrow Wilson said, "We must make the world safe for democracy." He did not say, "We must make the world democratic." Woodrow Wilson, Franklin Roosevelt, Harry Truman, and other presidents understood that you wanted to create the conditions in which liberal civilian democracies could flourish, the most important of which is international peace, but also within societies the rule of law and a strong middle class. The U.S. can help create the conditions for a democratic world, but we cannot create a world of democracies. That has to come one country at a time, bit by bit, largely as a result of efforts within those countries that we can encourage, but we can't impose.
Michael Lind, a very interesting book, The American Way of Strategy. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.